Hello and welcome to the DomJake podcast. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July. I'm your host, Dominic.
And I'm Jake.
All right.
There we
Well,
go. Just cut out
anyway.
that whole thing.
All right. So let's talk about Independence Day. Well, as far as I know, Independence Day is a day that the Declaration of Independence is celebrated, but it's also a day that nowadays family and friends come together and have backyard gatherings and barbecues. Barbies on the beach. Now that the 4th of July has passed, let's discuss what we did, and we'll dive a bit into the history of America's Independence Day and how it became an annual federal holiday. Let's dive into the 4th of July.
I think we American.
Yeah.
Jesus. You're like doing the acting laugh. You're like, okay. all of your joy went away.
So, anyways, why don't we talk about our 4th of July's this year? So, I'll talk about mine first. So, anyways, the only thing I really did was go to my friend's house and have a little picnic there, pretty much. And then, because the weather was kind of on and off, Mother Nature was probably on something. Well, we did go in the pool for a little bit, like swam in the pool. Also played threw like a little football. That was fun. And then, well, we had dinner there and lunch, and then I played video games there all day.
Oh yeah. What video games were you playing? Like, is it like the American, the Civil War or something? Like a video game about that, or?
Well, it's a game that I was not allowed to play as a kid, but it does have something to do with America and how Americans are portrayed in movies or
Oh.
the time. But it's a game called Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, I thought the GTA stood for Get the America.
Well, I wish that was the case, but hey, still got some American stereotypes in there.
Yeah, well, with all your yee ass haircut.
Yeah, and get some bitches on your you can fill in the lines.
I think we American.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I had to repeat that again.
So that was pretty much what I did this year. So let's talk about your 4th of July.
Oh yeah. Well, before we move on to me, that was pretty much a good one. Yeah. I mean, it's also kind of hard. Like the older you get, sometimes families might kind of take a little backseat, a little bit sometimes. But that's as good as it can get for you. That's a decent one that you had. Um, but yeah, here's how mine went. Essentially, my 4th of July was actually the day before. I kind of had a 3rd of July thing. Um, Pretty much we had the grill, right? The grilled stuff. It was like, oh, just burgers, hot dogs. I think a little bit of like tater tots or something, maybe corn, maybe something else like that. And that was pretty neat. What I did, and once again, this is on the 3rd, the day before, the day before the 4th of July. But essentially, what I did afterwards was I took a little walk with my mom, and we went down to one of the local public beaches, because we're pretty much fairly close to one. That doesn't narrow us down in the slightest. Um, but yeah, maybe like for a good 10 minutes or something, we just walked down there, and I was the only one who went into the estuary. No, into the ocean. Um, I was the only one who took a little dip. I took some shells from there, just two of them. Some gastropod must have lived in them a little bit. Um, we walked back, uh, and I lit the fire that I started to kind of set up before heading out on that walk. Um, none of us really, I mean, I was the only one who was there like the whole time. And then my mom just kind of sat on the deck to kind of watch it a little bit. Um, even though for a whole entire 2 hours I was saying, "Hey, I'm about to light it. I'm lighting it. It's lit right now. Come on out here." Apparently nobody knew that I said that, even though I said it pretty loudly. Saltiness aside, my 3rd of July went pretty nicely. A good celebration of the 4th, but on the 3rd. However,
Hmm.
the real question you were asking was our 4th of July's. I'm gonna be honest, it's just kind of like a normal day. Like it literally. I mean, we acknowledged that it was the 4th of July, but it's not like we had like a big firework festival. I mean, that would have made our dog nervous. Um,
Well,
but no, 4th of July, the most that we probably did was have a strawberry shortcake, maybe, or maybe some ice cream.
sounds
But
pretty American.
all right.
Yeah, sounds interesting. So, well, it's good that we had great 4th of Julys. And when it comes to holidays, they also have their histories.
They
Like,
do.
yes, they do. So, I'm going to be talking about, yep, we're going to be talking about the history of it. And what I had instructed Jake here and I to do is some research about this holiday. And we have decided on dividing up the research due to how much info there is.
Yep. Essentially, Dom researched the start of the holiday and up till around the end of the 50s. I mean, kind of general ballpark here, but
And Jake took the reins starting at the 60s to modern day. Yesterday, I guess, well, there's no time like now.
yep.
So let's talk about my facts, which, hey, there's no consistency with the times, but hey,
Um,
but I did gather as plenty of info as I could with this.
oh, yeah. All right. You're saving the best for last, I guess.
All right. I have a total. All right. Well, I got a total of 26 facts here.
One for every letter of the alphabet. Let's go.
All right. Number one. On July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was adopted by the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia, which started the celebration of this day to this day. Penned by Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Robert R. Livingston, and Roger Sherman. And
Nice.
and yeah, also number two, observations of the holiday didn't become commonplace till after the War of 1812. It quickly took off. The Library of Congress notes that the major historic events in the 19th century, such as groundbreaking ceremonies of the Erie Canal and the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, were scheduled to coincide with 4th of July festivities.
Oh,
Number
okay. So, speaking of the Erie Canal and the Baltimore slash Ohio railroads, you think they were pretty much just celebrating the grand openings of these things, and it just happens to, you know, just happens to coincide with the 4th of July sort of festivities, so they all lump it together,
probably what they
and it
did.
might have evolved over time to just be, oh, what they did on the Erie, Baltimore, Ohio, we just do every single year now. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it evolved to that point.
Maybe they have, but I think
Possible.
it's like probably like one of those. It's like they must have. Hey, let's celebrate the grand opening and like the American like the Declaration of Independence.
Oh yeah, our nation, the thing that we happened to run away from England. Oh yeah, we now have a nation that's separate from the king. Oh, oh
Hmm.
yeah, the canal and the railroads are there too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Interesting. Well, anyways, Well, number 3, by the 15th century, fireworks were widely used for religious festivals and public entertainment in Europe, and early U.S. settlers carried on those traditions. The association said,
What association?
whatever association was back in the 15th century.
Are you sure? Are you sure you didn't just go to Wikipedia and just said, yeah, Wikipedia is the association?
Except the only thing they had was called the encyclopedia back then, but
No, I'm pretty sure it was named after John Wick. Yeah,
John.
it's Wikipedia because it's named after
Yeah,
John Wick.
yeah. Yeah,
You know that famous 1750s revolutionary guy
yeah, of course.
who wrote
Speaking
down
of,
everything. He knows everything.
that leads me to the fourth fact, which, yeah, he did not, Mr. John Adams here did not celebrate 4th of July.
John Wick?
Yeah, him, Mr. John himself.
Yeah, John Adams, not John Wick.
By the 21st century, he already has 4 movies. But anyways, all jokes aside, number 5, since 1912, the Rebuild Society, which is a Danish-American friendship organization, has held a July 4th weekend festival that serves as a homecoming for Danish Americans in the Rebuild Hills of Denmark.
Oh, so maybe the start of it also could have happened to just be a Danish American celebration, and then maybe like neighbors or people just happen to see, like, oh, you guys are doing something, I want to do it too. Huh.
Probably. I want to do it.
You're blasting rockets in the air. I want to do that too.
Yeah, it's like when the big brother gets the big robots and the little brother gets the little dollar store little toy figurines. It's like he wants it too.
Hey, Dad, aka the King of England, told me it was my turn on the fireworks.
It was my turn. No, these are for big kids only, Timmy. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we were only what 100 years old at that point, right?
yeah, we were. All right.
Well,
So
actually, probably
that,
probably at that point. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, yeah. Never mind. Yeah, that's probably 100 years old. Never mind.
yeah. So, anyways, since 1959, the International Freedom Festival has been jointly held in Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario during the last week of June each year as a mutual celebration of Independence Day and Canada Day, which hey, shout out to all the Canadians watching. It accumulates it culminates in a large fireworks display over the Detroit River.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, Fourth of July is to celebrate USA, and Canada Day is to celebrate USA. Eh?
Yes, and
That's what it's all about.
yes, definitely, and to celebrate the bacon eaters there. Since 1785, which this was held, the Bristol 4th of July parade in Bristol, Rhode Island is the oldest continuous Independence Day celebration in the United States.
Oh yeah, I have never heard of that. And maybe we'll hit up the Bristol Fourth of July parade one day.
Maybe,
Only if everyone from Bristol shared this with their grandparent or something.
maybe.
We will be on the Bristol parade floats.
Perfect.
That's gonna be
Can't
our
wait for
goal.
that.
Yeah, the town of Bristol. Let's get our lawyers talking. I don't have a lawyer. Never mind.
Neither do I. Yeah, well, just have a parade and have our channel logo just like on a as a sign. Yeah, that would be fun. So, anyways,
We will move to Bristol just to be in the parade.
yeah. Oh, perfect.
No,
Anyways,
regardless,
in
yeah, carry on.
in 1870, the U.S. Congress made Independence Day an unpaid holiday for federal employees.
Maybe get rid of the UN part. That'd be great. That'd be
But
great. You know what? Show us you care about us by giving us one type of currency that has every single president or American figure on it. That way, okay, you give everybody a penny, a nickel, a dime, a quarter, a dollar, a five, a 10, a 20, a 50, and a 100.
all right,
I mean, that's probably not enough. That'd be like $160 or something.
that's a hell of a lot of money.
Oh, you know, especially at the time.
Yes, back then. Yep. So in 1779, July 4th fell on a Sunday, and the holiday was celebrated on Monday, July 5th. And who knows why? Well, okay, so the next fact. In 1938, Congress changed Independence Day to a paid federal holiday.
Yeah, they finally got rid of the UN.
Yes,
Nice. It
yep,
only took them 100 years.
only did. Yes, it did. So after the Revolutionary War, American citizens would continue celebrating Independence Day every year, and celebrations allowed the new nation's emerging political leaders to address the citizens and create a feeling of unity. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so not much to really say there, but next fact.
There's so much to say there. You're not saying it.
So yeah, anyway, so yeah, pretty much ever since the Revolutionary War, after that, they would be celebrating Independence Day. You know?
You already said that.
Yeah. So next fact. By the last decade of the 18th century, the two major political parties, the Federalist Party and the Democratic and Republicans that had arisen, began holding separate 4th of July celebrations in many large cities.
So that probably made it so that could have been the start of like different, I guess, celebration styles happening. Because if people were okay, I'm not insinuating there was a civil war as a result of this, the American Civil War, at least the first one, because there's probably going to be a second one by the time we're uploading this, maybe. But at least the current only Civil War happened for worse reasons, but this could be a very neat thing. um, could have been just different events that happened. Like I know, I want to say Louisiana is like a big party. I mean, it's more like a Mardi Gras type of place, but it definitely has its own culture. It's different from like say Pennsylvania or Massachusetts, and so obviously those are different parts of the world or of the nation, but that could have been the start of a difference in celebrations. Honestly, like a lot of these that you said, a lot of these facts could technically be starts of neat little celebrations that might have continued on till this very day. That's a lot of a lot of this is just speculation and theorizing. I didn't do the research on the founding, so maybe you can answer the questions that I have. But yeah, carry on. My big tangent aside.
Alright, so George Washington has issued double rations of rum to his soldiers to mark the anniversary of independence of 1778 and 1781, several years before the key American victory at the Battle of Yorktown. Massachusetts became the first state to make July 4th an official state holiday. Falling in midsummer, the 4th of July has since the late 19th century become a major focus of leisure activities and accommodation for family get-togethers. The most common symbol of the holiday is the American flag, and the common musical compa-
Accompaniment.
accompaniment is the Star Spangled Banner in the national anthem of the United States.
Oh,
Oh, JJ.
I I completely know this. Uh, maybe I'll phrase it in a question. I'm gonna ask you something. Maybe you wrote it down, but but maybe you didn't. Who wrote the Star Spangled Banner?
Who wrote it?
Yep. Who
I
wrote
wish
the
I.
words?
Sounds like something that I would assume. Well, I'm not the brightest in history, but just I honestly can't even answer that.
Francis
Honestly,
Scott Key.
perfect.
All right. What was what was the song before? What did somebody put that poem's words to?
Something about the poems to like something about America.
No, they actually stole an Irish, I think it's Irish, I could be wrong about that one, but a drinking song from basically Europe, and that's what it was sung to the tune of. This whole time, for however long we've been a nation, we've been technically singing in like a European drinking song
Well,
or a parody of the drinking song. And apparently, you get yelled at if you insinuate anything about that that song being anything but America's blood, right? It's America's blood. That's the nation. That's the nation's song. That's the song of the capital, or whatever the heck they want to say. But yeah, fun fact. It yes, the words were written by an American by
but
technicality, but the tune
it
is
was
not
stolen.
American at all.
It was stolen. So
Um,
over
well,
the
one more thing, one more question I want to ask you, and then we'll move on from that. A little, the little pop quiz will be over afterwards. Where was Francis Scott Key when he wrote the poem?
geez, my hmm, I can't really say I remember because I haven't been in history since school.
The Chesapeake Bay. Okay, you pretty much fail. Wait a minute, one more, because I just thought of it right now. How many stanzas, because poetry in the stanzas are paragraphs, but whatever. How many stanzas are in the Star Spangled Banner?
How many stanzas?
Yep,
God, you're really pulling my leg here.
four. I memorized two of them because that's pretty much the thing that us music nerds were like, oh, let's do a second one now because everyone knows the first one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the most common occurrence at like
Okay, yeah. Oh, now
the,
I
the
see.
the most common occurrence that you see at like games, right? You'll see that at every ball game. Um, Different events too. Sometimes you'll see the Star Spangled Banner sung, or performed. However, whenever ball games and events like that would they would have like the thing sung, right? But the Star Spangled Banner is at least whenever it's sung, not like performed, because then it would just be music. Um, the Star Spangled Banner is usually stopped after the first verse or stanza. So that's a little fun fact that because we were all nerds one year, we all decided to add another verse in there. So every single time it was always, oh, two verses now sung. So, but yeah, you shouldn't clap after it. It is disrespectful. And yet you see all of the sporting events, everyone's like, yeah! In,
Woo!
in fact, if you're cheering, if you're clapping, that is more disrespectful. I don't remember why, but I just know it is. Like you just don't do that. So I don't do that. Um, I'm gonna look that up right now.
So while you're looking that up,
Yeah,
you
feel
probably
free to move on. Yeah.
so over the years, the political importance of the holiday would eventually decline, but Independence Day still remained an important national holiday and a symbol of patriotism. In the early stages of the revolutionary movement in the colonies during the 1760s and the early 70s, well, 1770s, patriots used such celebrations to proclaim their resistance to Parliament's legislation during lauding King George III as the real defender of English liberties. The prevalence of heavy drinking and the many injuries caused by setting off fireworks prompted the reformers of the late 19th and the early 20th century to mount a safe and sane 4th of July movement.
You don't want everybody getting injured on your little celebration. All right, I get that.
I would not want that at all.
So, I mean, I have a little bit of an update on a little thing right here on the reason why you shouldn't clap after it. Pretty much, it's a hymn. It's similar to a church song, and so at least this is according to
Mm-hmm.
countryliving.com. So maybe not the most reliable source, but I could try to find a different site for it. But according to Country Living, it's just because it's considered a hymn, like
Mm-hmm.
a hymnal song. It is an anthem. This one's from uexpress.com, where someone asks, Dear Miss Manners, I was taught in grade school by my music teacher that it is disrespectful to clap after the singing of the Star Spangled Banner. I have not clapped after the band. Oh, geez, I don't want to subscribe to this. It's asking me to surprise. Oh man. I could at least read below the subscription thing. This is the answer. You were taught very correctly. You shouldn't have done that. Um, It is an anthem sung for the glory of the country, rather to amuse the listeners or to congratulate oneself for having. And I can't read the rest because the block is blocking me. But yeah, it's just I was told this for pretty much my 4 years of being in high school choir. Just it's disrespectful to do it because it is a sign of the nation. It's kind of like sending off the the flag. If it touches the ground, you gotta burn it. It's just a proper send off.
And what do people do? They'll clap at every basketball game
They will
or a
clap
baseball game.
afterwards, yes. Or whenever whenever they're putting up a good old glory, the stars and
Mm-hmm.
stripes, whatever you want to call it, the American flag.
Yep.
It's not supposed to touch the ground, but a lot of people drop it on the ground and they're like, oh yeah, it's still good. I can put it back up, which technically, okay, sure, that could be correct. But the reason behind the burning the flag after it touches the ground is because you see like that very famous like American Revolutionary War painting of just all of these guys like
Mm-hmm.
with the explosions going off behind them, with like a lot of their fallen soldiers just surrounding them. They're still gonna keep that flag up. That was the whole thing. It was well, actually, that's pretty much the first line of the Star Spangled Banner too. Like, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? So proudly we hailed the flags. The fuck. I'm. Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you can actually see that with the words in the first verse or stanza that they were trying to keep it up. So if you're disrespecting the flag by letting it go down,
Mm-hmm.
you're worse American. I hate to tell you that, but you're worse than okay. I don't technically mean that because a lot of people don't know. This is only for educational purposes. I'm not going to get mad if you didn't know that, because this is a good educational moment. Even I learned something recently on this. So, yeah,
Yeah, so
Star
good to
Spangled
know.
Banner or flag or whatever.
Next
That
time you go to a
aside,
game,
move on.
don't clap it next time when you go to a basketball game. But
It's always hard because everyone else around you still does it.
of course it is. So, anyways,
Move
so
on.
for what the Declaration of Independence is, well, the Declaration of Independence was the first formal statement by a nation's people asserting their right to choose their own government.
Is it anything like the Constitution?
I would guess so.
Yeah, it's just an old piece of paper with rules on it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Here's what it is. On July 2nd, the Continental Congress voted in favor of Lee's resolution for independence in a near unanimous vote. The New York delegation abstained, but later voted affirmatively. On that day, John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail that July 2nd will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival, and that the celebration should include pomp and parade games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other.
Oh, so they knew about minions 200 years ago.
Yes, they have. Gru even hasn't even heard of the minions yet back then.
Yeah, fun fact, actually, John Adams uh, saw that his wife doodled something on a piece of paper, and it looked like a banana with glasses. And so from then on, he had the idea for the minions, but decided it was kind of too ahead of its time. So
Yeah,
if you flip over the Constitution, or the Declaration of Independence, then you'll see that, oh, there's actually just a Minions story on the back. Fun fact.
perfect. I'm sure it's like I'm waiting to hear that in the special features. In the pre-revolutionary years, colonists had held annual celebrations of the king's birthday, which traditionally included the ringing of bells, bonfires, processions, whatever if I pronounce that right, and speech making. By contrast, during the summer of 1776, some colonists celebrated the birth of independence by holding mock funerals for King George III as a way of symbolizing the end of monarchy's hold on America and the triumph of liberty.
Huh. So again, that's kind of turning into two different types of celebrations based on two different, I guess, populations of the Americas. That's
Yeah.
that's neat to think.
We all know that John Adams does not like 4th of July. So,
We do.
I think this is what he said about it. The second day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch, whatever it is. Whatever the word is. Whatever the word is. In
E
the
P
history.
EPOCHA.
Yes.
Epoca, Epoca, well, I don't know
Epocha.
what that is.
Alpaca. No, just kidding. In the history of America, I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as of the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shoes, games, sports, gun, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other from this time forward forevermore. You will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of this toil and blood and treasure will that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is more than worth all the means, and that posterity will triumph in that day's transaction, even even though we shall rue it, which I trust God we shall not. Which is written by John Adams on July 3rd, 1776.
Hmm. It sounded exactly like him until Illuminations.
Yep. Forgive me with those minions. They really like that company.
Oh, geez. I mean, you're kind of obsessed with them because that one video, that one podcast, the movie one, you were recording one.
Yeah. Which, even before the whole podcast, I liked them. But yes. In the 1770s, America wasn't
What
really
was
a
that
nation.
number?
In the 17.
Mm-hmm.
So
Keep
yes.
this in.
Okay. By the way, listen to our other podcast, which talks about the minions. But in the 1700s, America wasn't really a nation of United States. Instead, there were 13 colonies and the distinct personalities. From 1763 to 1773, Britain's King George III increasingly placed pressure on the colonies as he and the British Parliament enacted a succession of draconian taxes and laws on them. Excessive taxes on British luxury goods like tea and sugar were designed to benefit the British crown without any regard for the hardships of the colonists. By 1764, the phrase taxation without representation is tyranny spread throughout the colonies as a rallying cry of outrage. And not 1770s.
I mean, honestly, could you really say that the United States are united?
Yeah,
Have they ever been?
I have no idea.
I mean, they were before they were the U.S., right?
Definitely.
Back when it was, well, actually, even then it probably wasn't. Weird. Human beings are weird.
Yeah, we are very weird. We're the most destructive creatures, next to probably apes. But anyways, the Stamp Act of 1765 became the straw that broke the colonists' backs. Passed by Parliament in March of that year, I believe. This act taxed any pieces of printed paper, including newspapers, legal documents, ships, papers, and even playing cards.
Oh, Jesus. Not my Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh no, not my Uno cards. So tensions boiled over on March 5th, 1770, in Boston Harbor during the street fight between a group of colonists and British soldiers. World Star of 1770. Yeah. The soldiers fired shots that killed 47-year-old Crispus Attucks. Even if I don't know if correct me if I'm not saying that right. The first American and black man to die along with three other colonists in the Boston Massacre. In 1773, the Boston Tea Party erupted when colonists disguised as Mohican Indians raided a British ship, dumping all the tea overboard to avoid paying the taxes. Continued pressure led to resistance and the start of the Revolutionary War in the towns of Lexington and Concord when a militia of patriots battled British soldiers on April 19th, 1775, conditions were ripe for American independence. Yeah, so, alright, this is my last fact. When the first battles in the Revolutionary War broke out in April 1775, only a handful of colonists wished for total independence from Great Britain, and those who did were considered extremists. Hmm. Fact check me if I'm wrong, anybody listening. So,
Oh man, I don't know if I have the time for that. Because
uh,
it seems like me and two others might be the only ones listening.
and any of our family too.
Oh yeah.
So, So, anyways, let's see what you got on the fact list here.
So the thing is, I kind of did mine in a little bit of a different organization method. I researched for a good like hour or two. I'm good at researching, so to like a lot of other people that would be like 5 hours ish, something like that. But I just know what to read. That's honestly it. I just know what to read. Anywho,
Yeah.
my organization method pretty much dives into different, I guess, eras, you could call them, different periods of time. We mentioned earlier that I was going to pick things up at 1960s era, which was pretty much rampant with hippie culture, anti-Americanism, even though they were living in America at the time, anti-war efforts, anti-soldiers, just experimenting with fun and psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just various different things like that. So I guess I'll take it away. Traditional celebrations mentioned by Dom mostly continued in general, such as fireworks, such as getting together with family and celebrating the nation. However, with the civil rights movement and cultural shifts leading to protests and demonstrations, it kind of questioned the holiday's relevance because really we were sending and yes, this is during the Vietnam War era. We were sending different people who were able to fight, however they weren't able to vote for whether they fought or not. So it was kind of a weird balancing act between some people. And you were kind of labeled in a negative light if you just fled the draft, you just dodged. So some people didn't like the direction that America was heading because they were sending people away. And need I remind you, people who were safe in their penthouse suites were sending people who just weren't them. Oh, I'm not going to send my rich family overseas, but I will send these guys who have done nothing for the nation or so they see. But
Sounds like
regardless,
this sounds like the beginning of when people were just protesting, like, and then just the news just covers it
the
as if
news covers it. Yet,
so. Yeah, that's interesting.
and around that same exact time, one of the bigger ones you hear a lot about in historical documentations about the 1960s to 70s is, well, Woodstock. Well, emergence of new customs such as music festivals, art exhibits, and outdoor movie screenings, because those started to be a thing.
Oh yeah, the drive-in movie theaters.
Yep.
Ah, that's something we forgot to mention.
Oh yeah, that's. Hey, maybe we could edit this in on the movie one, which is already public. So maybe not. But yeah, little drive-in movie theaters are also a thing that started out here. Of course, with art comes inspiration, right? And different things that happen around the nation, we're going to be in the art. We're going to be depicted in the movies or in the songs that musicians were writing. I mean, I mentioned Woodstock. A lot of the people who were at Woodstock were anti-Vietnam War. This isn't about the Vietnam War. I just felt it was a little bit worth mentioning because, of course, the Vietnam War did happen with
Hmm.
American citizens, with other countries too, but with American citizens. So if this rich white person was just going to send me overseas when I don't want to, and I'm role playing as somebody back in the 60s, I don't want to go across the sea and fight a war that I didn't even start. The rich ones did it. So why should I be the one ending it? So
Sounds
you
like one of
start. you start questioning things like that. So
Might have been like a he said, she said thing.
it
Like,
could have been.
the rich, this guy did it. No, it was you rich people.
It honestly could have been. None of us were really there. I mean,
I mean, maybe some of our parents might have been like little like toddlers around this time, but that's not the point of this.
I mean, no. But honestly, like during that 60s and 70s point, there was a big focus on civil rights and racial equality. in an
Right.
effort to in an effort to make things equal,
Mm-hmm.
on everybody getting a relatively better experience in the nation, even though the nation had apparently been a thing for 200 years ish. Well, at that point, maybe like 150 years. Um, Even though it's been a pre established state, not everyone was equal, and not everyone was able to make these decisions, and not everyone was able to celebrate these fun little things because of a whole bunch of other other things that unfortunately did end up happening.
I don't know, I guess this is like at the time now where people are just now. It's not even about having fun anymore. It just sounds like a divide and conquer type of thing. This whole thing, from what it sounds like.
Which kind of is a thing. All
Yep.
right, moving on from the 70s, we're getting to the 1980s to 1990s. Like I said, I did these in kind of eras, kind of decades. So a lot of it's probably generalized. Some of it might be from the earlies. Some of it might be from the lates. But yeah, um, do actually wait. Um, a lot of Americans had a little bit of a heightened patriotic spirit due to the bicentennial that happened in 1976. So yeah, I mean, yes, I know I said I was done with the 70s, but um,
But it was kind of the groundwork from the 70s.
that kind of sparked a little bit of I'm going to say revolution in the 1980s.
I
So yeah,
guess.
the bicentennial, which means the 200th anniversary, um, in 1976, that was pretty much a good resurgence, I guess, of American patriotism and celebration of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which is a long phrase to say. So from this point, I might say DOI, the DOI. It's the DOI,
Good day.
right? The signing of the DOI. See, that
Mm-hmm.
flows off the tongue a lot better. The signing of the DOI happened all the way back 200 years from that 1976 point. However, a lot of the people who were born around that time kind of had to wait a little bit, so that's probably where the 1980s to 1990s comes from in regards to mentioning that.
All right.
Another thing that happened in the 80s to 90s area would be a renewal in interest in historical reenactments during Independence Day celebrations. So, pretty much that's basically saying a lot of people are like putting on plays or demonstrations of how things could have happened. Technically, I don't know if they knew exactly what happened, but there could have been someone who wrote down everything. And if somebody did document everything and how everything happened, then these little reenactments would show, oh, this is how things happened. It's pretty neat seeing how things happened, right? Like, yeah, I mean, every fifth grader in our town, anyway, I think, had the opportunity to see a Civil War reenactment, which is obviously a different time, but
I remember. Oh yeah, I remember those field trips we went on in fifth grade.
I had it at my school, but everyone else was kind of having a field trip if they had, permission slips signed, to just have come to my school, right?
Mm-hmm.
and that was a pretty neat thing. Of course, my ears were very sensitive, so I kind of I was a fifth grader that cried during that event because I hated the gunfire. But and actually, I don't think they were real guns. I think they were just like cork guns or
Um,
something like that. They were like loud still,
I
and
think
they were
they're yeah. I think I went like, the last week of fifth grade. I think we took a field trip to your school.
yeah. I
Yep,
think everyone did.
I remember that. So been years now at this point.
I remember back in third or fourth grade, actually. Yeah, I think it was the fourth grade because third grade was I was in a different school because renovations were being made. Right. And so in fourth grade, I was like on recess whenever the demonstration uh, was being done for the people ahead of me, right, in fifth grade. Um, so I fell off of the playground when the gunfire was happening, or when the popping sound happened, and I pretended like I got shot off of a tower, which was probably a bad thing to do because my pinky toe, it didn't break, but it really hurt for the rest of the day.
Looked like it hyperextended.
Hey, maybe.
That's a big oof.
Yeah. Of course, kind of carrying on, moving on. Some critics argue that celebrations did ignore the country's flaws, which is something that
It
what this
can be true, but at the same time, I don't know. People just want to have fun.
it's one of those things. There are different, obviously different people act different ways. That's 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 true no matter what you're talking. Some people do genuinely want everyone to focus on the big picture instead of taking a break from the big picture to maybe do some celebrations or just to take an excuse to eat some burgers with your buds, right? But of course there are some people who would see, oh, every other day is kind of poopy, so I'm just gonna try to not focus on the big poopy, right? So, but some of the people in that time, and this is actually kind of the start of that, at least to a grander scale, the start of that mentality of why are we celebrating something when this nation's broken? That type of mentality.
Mm.
Um, of course, it exists today. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've even seen some online posts like, well, at the time of recording this, 2 days ago, but obviously when this is released, maybe a week ago, maybe. But that mentality has definitely continued throughout this day, and we were only talking about the 80s to the 90s there.
I think it sounds like from that point on, things started to regress in a way.
Things did start to. It's kind of weird because at that point we kind of dive into different flow charts, like the we kind of dive into a fork in the road, right? Where
So,
some people are more critical of, hey, shouldn't we fix the issues that are happening instead of celebrating people who were trying to do bad things? But yeah, at the at that time, people kind of started to branch off, right? Like you got the people who were trying to focus on the bigger picture, like, oh, why can't we fix the housing crisis? Why can't we, you know, learn to work together with everybody, no matter what their delineation is, no matter their heritage, whatever. No matter who they are, we should be able to get around to
like, get
getting
along.
getting along with them, right? Regardless of anything, any differences should have been celebrated. That's one half
Like,
of
forget.
that's one of the forks in the road there, right? And then
Right.
there were the other people who were like, "Oh, we just want to celebrate something. Let us do something.
The
Celebrate
only day
the
you want to put
nation."
your differences aside and just get along, have fun.
Well, that's not the only day, but
Well, just in general too.
the sentiment behind that is what a lot of people do think about. Or I should, you know what? Yeah, I'll stick to a lot of people because I'm sure it's more than 10.
Hmm.
However, speaking of 10, or I guess 10 times 200, the, the 2000s. Um,
All right.
this section kind of dives into a little bit of a, I don't want to say controversial, but somewhat sad event. By saying 2000, might be able to deduce that I will be talking about the attack on the World Trade Center
And well,
in September 11th, 2001. We will dive into that in this section, so please skip forward to whatever time is on the screen if you want to go directly past that. Um, this is going to be a big portion, so hopefully, hopefully you skip to the right area, because the last thing we want to do is offend or bring up bad memories. However, it is worth saying in the moment of
yeah,
in this discussion, it is worth bringing up
it's important
some,
in the history of the country. But if you don't want to hear it, just skip this whole section.
and we do not fault you for doing that.
Hmm. And then again, it's also important to talk about it. So,
Right.
hmm.
Anyway, skip forward now.
All right.
Now that now that the other people who skipped forward aren't here, let's dive into the 2000s. Heightened security measures were implemented following the 9/11 attacks. It did in part affect some family customs that once were common, such as families and friends who were separated by country borders, in some cases, were turned away and not allowed in the States. It made more sense to the States to not allow anyone in, as anyone could have been an enemy. Regardless, on the 4th of July in 2002, so the next year after, the United States celebrated Independence Day, marking the country's 226th anniversary of declaring independence from Britain. While there were no significant historical events specific to that day, it was definitely a part of the period following after the 9/11 attacks. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, there was indeed a heightened sense of unity and patriotism for those in the United States. Even if you didn't know anyone who perished personally, every American felt that shock. Most, even to this day, could remember that day as if it was merely minutes ago. Tangent aside, the attacks brought the nation together in a collective spirit of resilience and determination. Americans rallied around the shared sense of national identity and solidarity as the country mourned the loss of lives and grappled with the implications of terrorist attacks. However, it is important to note that this unity and sense of common purpose gradually evolved over time. While the aftermath of the attacks initially fostered a strong sense of national unity, subsequent years brought about debates and divisions on various issues, including foreign policy, national security, civil liberties, and the appropriate response to terrorism. By 2002, the country was still grappling with the complex aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. And while a significant degree of unity persisted, differing opinions and perspectives began to emerge regarding the best way forward. Over time, the national discourse became more nuanced, reflecting a diversity of viewpoints and ongoing discussions about the implications of the attacks and the appropriate balance between security and civil liberties. So, while there was a sense of increased unity in the immediate aftermath of the attacks, the country's overall level of unity and the separation dynamics on the 4th of July in 2002 would have depended on various factors, including regional differences, political affiliations, and individual perspectives.
So I guess in a way it brought people together after this whole attack happened.
Yes, immediately after, it did bring everyone together because it was one of those fresh wounds. And so even if you weren't affected, you were affected in some way.
Well,
And
yeah, of course I don't remember it happening.
yeah, you were born. I was in the womb.
Yeah.
However, it was one of those things where at that time everyone was together, but it's one of those things where once the band-aid was peeled off and the wound started to heal a little bit, sometimes sometimes that wound got a little bit infectious. That's
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 I
way.
guess that's an analogy I'll put on this. Like there was that unity kind of following right afterwards, but kind of in that 2000 maybe 5 or 6 2000 I'm gonna say 2006 just to be a little bit safer or but by the 2006 point people started to regress back to the oh it's us versus them, it's not a unity thing, it's not a let's get together as Americans, it's now oh this versus that, not a unity thing.
Well, now it's like because oh they probably thought okay it's been years since this thing happened. Let's now attack each other again.
Because it's one of those things. I can see reasons why people would have both opinions, right? It's one of those where it's like we need to honor the many people who lost their lives unwarranted, by the way. Like this was just out of nowhere pretty much. Um all of these people who perished in this gruesome event, this tragedy, we need to honor them.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, you had the we can honor them,
What
but
the?
and then on the other side, you had the people who were like, we can honor them, great, but we kind of want to move on a little bit. Can we understand that this event happened, but now it happened in the past? Do you have to do all of these things to cram things down our throat again? Right? It's
Yeah.
okay to and I'm saying this is that side's opinion. It's okay to, celebrate their life or achievements in your own personal way, but why do I have to feel sad too? That was kind of like the two different sides. Well, of course, it's more of a spectrum, but the advance, I guess the extremes are the I need to celebrate them every single time. We will never forget. And then on the other side, we won't forget, but can we move on? Because with grief, of course, everybody does it differently. So it's kind of a tricky situation to just say do one thing because everybody does act differently towards bad events like this. It's one of those things where it's just hard to deal with, right? Um,
Yeah. So
Yeah, before we move on, do you have anything to say about this or
oh I don't know. I don't know what's really on the top of my head, but it's like I don't know. Well, all I can say is this should bring people. The whole event should definitely It should have definitely bring people together, which I think it already has. But I think it should have. I think at that point on, it should have stayed that way instead of people fighting all the time.
Mm,
And but it's like we're not going to forget about this event, but I think we should definitely kind of keep. Yeah, it should bring us all together.
right, yeah. But as we said before, were the United States really united ever? Right, yeah,
At this point, it's in question.
yeah. At this point, just call states. Okay, hello. Welcome back, everybody who decided to skip forward. Give us a
All
moment
right.
to maybe breathe a little bit.
Yep, for sure.
Okay. Mm, I'm ready to move on. I just needed to kind of get that little breath out of the way. Are you fine to move on too? Because I don't
Yep.
want to move on if you're not.
I think I've said what I had to say, so let's move on.
All right. There's definitely an emphasis on national unity and resilience during Independence Day celebrations in the 2000s.
Hmm.
There was also an increase in recognition of cultural diversity. That's kind of when you got like a mixed neighborhood, right? It's like, oh, this neighbor, which is a different sort of background than I am, is doing this. I might adopt that too. Like different cool little things. Like, oh, this is just how I celebrate the day. And then it's like, oh, can I do that too? So spread the cultures. That's when all that diversity ended up happening, at least starting. Yeah, at
This is
least
when it
starting to go bigger, right?
originated.
I mean, you kind of had the origination back in the 1700s when you were saying things
Hmm.
like one of your things was about the the Federalist Party versus the Democratic Republican,
Something like that right there. Yeah.
and they did do different things even back then, but like a variety of reasons are why we do things, but definitely a big push forward happened during the 2000s with adopting different things into your celebrations. Some communities promoted alternative celebrations to include all residents. So sometimes it might have included, like I was saying, people coming from overseas to hang out with the American cousins that they might have for a celebration. During the 2010s, if we're going to move on a little bit further,
We are gonna move on.
uh, during the 2010s, most of the 2000s kind of remained the same. However, there is one big thing that technically this podcast has spoken about before.
Which
That
we definitely
is
have.
that is social media platforms. Um, Obviously, in that 2010-ish type of time, even though I think 2006 was when Facebook was invented or something like that.
I think
Um,
2004, I believe.
Even before that. Oh, geez. Um, Social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook were used to organize events and share patriotic messages. Of course, there are a lot of American people using these sites. However, there are people who aren't American, and the oversaturation of 4th of July posts could feel kind of awkward seeing celebrations that they don't physically recognize. It's similar to how someone would feel during Christmas if you don't celebrate it, right? Like, oh, just oh, let's have a holly jolly Christmas, but you're Jewish. It's like, oh well, I'll just learn to silence it out. I'll learn to
Oh,
ignore
yeah.
it. It might be a cool song, but it's not my song. So it could have
Ain't
been
right.
just a little bit awkward for people.
So yeah, I could see why people that are not from America are gonna be confused. It's like, oh, we have an American song, but they don't.
Because honestly, like, Independence Day isn't technically just a United States thing. It's not just American. Of course, July 4th just happens to be, I think, uniquely our independence. I very much could be wrong about that one. It'd be kind of awkward if everybody was independent on July 4th. However, it's not just a United States thing. Australia had an Independence Day. Actually has, I think. Um, Present tense has. Um, I think France has an Independence Day. I think maybe South Korea has an Independence Day, maybe. Just different various places have their Independence Days. And seeing posts only about the 4th of July kind of feels silly sometimes.
Guess so. I guess we can move on from that.
Sure, yeah, we can move on from that. Speaking of social media, there's kind of an intersection of Independence Day with social justice movements,
Ah,
which, not to downgrade any of their, I guess, movements, let's just say, not to downgrade any of the movements, because a lot of them are fighting for good things. But there did kind of a few movements who were like, oh, screw the back, kind of gunning back to the 2000s, actually the 60s, I think. But there was a lot of the discussion was about the, oh, this nation doesn't care about me, so why should I care about it, sort of thing. Obviously, we have more freedom now than we did.
then we did like what back then.
Yeah, like a while ago. However, sometimes it might still feel like you are not free, because why do I have to pay 20% of the money that I earned for the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing is just the start of it all in some cases. But there's definitely, like I said, the intersection of Independence Day with social justice movements. Some for good reasons, some for bad, some for
Yeah,
there's different things. Let's just say
there's like not just one answer to it.
it's well, once we get into different movements, political or civil or bowel. That's a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Applause now.
Clap, clap.
Crap, crap.
Yeah.
Because it is a bowel movement. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's quite literally a shitty joke. Okay.
Literally.
Shitterly. I'm
Yeah.
done.
Okay.
uh, yeah, they're obviously with different movements, you don't want to downgrade all of them. At least a sane person wouldn't want to downgrade the efforts that somebody else is going through. Um, Moving on, debates on the true meaning of freedom and equality. Kind of tying in with some of the social justice movements, the debates on what it really means to be free, what it really means to be equal, kind of gained a little bit of a resurgence, pretty much due to social media, where one person might post there saying, oh, this is what I think. Do you think the same? And then some people will be like, oh, I do think the same. I didn't even know that I thought the same, but I do think the same. So now I have two people who believe, well, the same, who are now sharing a platform together, and they're able to
Interact.
each pick each other's brains about why they think what they think. That's one of those gray areas for social media. I think we even mentioned it back then, where it's like, yes, you get people who are just like you, and you're able to interact with people who believe the same things and think the same things. However, you kind of see the opposite of what you think, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing in some cases because
Yeah.
some people can't. take, oh, I have a different opinion than you. They have to they have to be right.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, not everybody has to agree with everything either.
Well, hey, where's the respect, right? If you
Yeah.
you treat thy neighbor as you want thyself to be treated.
Yes, definitely. I mean, unless you're on Twitter.
We don't talk about that.
But
Except
anyways,
except for when we did talk about that.
well, anyways,
During
that
the
aside,
during the 2010s, another thing pretty much that happened were ongoing discussions about historical context and treatment of marginalized communities. As we pretty much all knew, all of those, what, five or six people that you said before,
hmm
the founding fathers were all rich, white, old, all little fuddy duddies, right?
oh yeah,
And so,
definitely.
and it's all kind of weird how it was only that type of people who were running the show. And we kind of got into a little bit of a better place where everyone can kind of gather a little bit together somewhat. I mean, as long as you're friends, right? Like,
Yeah.
the most ideal thing would be to sing Kumbaya with everybody and have a good time, but something tells me that might not happen soon. Mm,
Mm,
But definitely there were different debates and ongoing discussions regarding basically the past. Well, yeah, are we celebrating? It kind of ties into other things I've said before, but are we celebrating a good thing if that good thing is built on the potential suffering of my ancestors? Maybe.
but yeah, I don't know. So, anyways, what's your next thing you got?
The next thing is present day, which
So,
is pretty much 2 days ago.
yeah, well, 20 or 2020s and beyond.
Well, yeah, we could say the 20s and beyond, the roaring 20s. Mm.
Yeah.
Once again, it kind of ties into the 2010s because the social media stuff hasn't really gone away. It, in fact, probably skyrocketed since then. Emphasis on skyrocket because that's fireworks. Yay, cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Individualized celebrations based on personal values and beliefs did kind of end up happening. Definitely different values and beliefs ended up happening where people would celebrate their own way of celebration, or they might not even celebrate at all, but they're doing it in their closed house.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
they're pretty much doing it without anyone really paying much of attention to what they're doing. Um, you see on different communities, like a Facebook community, for example. Um, just the other day, I was kind of scrolling through our local one because sometimes I think it's kind of cool, and sometimes I have actual things to give out to the community, maybe. But regardless of the fact, people were people have different views even just on there. It is an entire town, well, not an entire town, but a lot of people from the town is interacting with each other. You get into things like, hey, can you not do these loud fireworks for my dog is having a hard time with it, or my my grandfather who served in Vietnam War is having a hard time with it. Can you stop? And then you get the people who are like, "No, let me have fun. I'm doing it on my property." Well, you're kind of doing it in the sky, which I don't think anyone owns.
Nobody owns the blue sky.
I think, well, technically, I think the only people who own sky would be
Well, like
like
the
federal, like government buildings because they do
Mhm.
have like no-fly zones. And it's like, oh well, you flew here, you you knew that you were not supposed to fly here, so we're gonna take you out of the sky.
Or what if you were like flying a like drone spying on whatever the government building? Will they shoot your drone down? Who knows?
Well, they probably would. Like, it's probably not a who knows question. It's probably a when will they do it? It's
Yeah.
not it's not an if, it's a when. Local communities even started organizing inclusive events and activities, which promoted, well, everyone to kind of be together, or an effort to get everyone to be together.
I'd say so.
Something else that is kind of happening is a growing awareness of environmental concerns and sustainable practices. Like, if you're going to shoot rockets into the air, what about the debris that gets left behind? Would it be biodegradable? Would it be good for the environment? Um, I mean, that's just a simple version of all of that. But if you're going to be doing it on a beach, will it go into the water? Will it ruin the whole ocean's ecosystem? Um, there's obviously more to it than just the fireworks. Like, are you eating too much of the beef, which is causing a cow shortage or something, right? There's got to be a lot of things,
Yep, we did have that at some point.
and sometimes this kind of tying into the idea of people, I guess. mm, I don't know how to say this. Let's see if I can go back. But yeah, there definitely was a growing awareness of environmental concerns and sustainable practices. Part of it is kind of harkening back to the feeling of, hey, there are bigger issues. Can we focus on one thing? Like, can we fix this issue instead of partying our bums off? So you got some of that going around with, oh, the nation is in a bad place because of, you know, all of this litter that's on the ground, which does happen a lot, especially the confetti that happens with the parades that may or may not happen. Um, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's like it goes everywhere and it does affect more than you would think.
Next, last topic here.
I mean, the last thing that I have right here anyway is some individuals, and this is modern day, this is like now, some individuals and groups choose not to celebrate at all, just due to political and social reasons. You had I think one of the things that started like I guess the big hullabaloo was the NFL players who just kneeled during the anthem, right? Due to different reasons, they just chose not to participate in it, which you can do. Believe it or not, you're able to not celebrate.
You
It,
don't have
it's
to,
it's
but
like it's like saying our nation's capital is Christmas. No, I mean like you don't you don't have to be a Christian.
no, you don't have to be. But no, you don't have to be. You can still choose to celebrate it if you want.
Yes, and that's the important part. It's the choice of celebration. It's not the forced.
You must celebrate right now.
Jeez, yes. Some people it feels like will force people to do something that they don't want to do. But there's definitely kind of kind of going back to the 2010s, but definitely a lot more people now are just not celebrating it at all for a plethora of reasons. Some that we said before, like, oh, this nation doesn't care about me, so why should I care about it? Or just potentially just against their religion.
Maybe it is against their religion to celebrate it.
Right, and technically 4th of July is even though John Adams did have that quote that you read earlier, um, even though he mentioned God, it's technically not a religious holiday. So, should we really prosecute people for not
No,
being of a certain way?
I mean, this is America, so you don't have to celebrate it.
Right. And technically speaking, another just American fun fact, which doesn't really have anything to do with the 4th of July, except it has to do with the flag, which it's kind of related, I guess, then, is
Mhm.
the Pledge of Allegiance didn't originally include under God. That's a newer
Oh,
addition.
the original. Hmm.
The original was not God related. It was just a poem dedicated to the flag. It didn't introduce anything about religion until some time after.
Yeah, remember. Yeah, remember we used to always have to say that every day in school.
Yep.
So I don't know. Is there anything else we want to say before we wrap this up?
Um, I mean, we did dive into a lot of historical and modern day beliefs and issues. Um, this is not us saying what you should believe or what you should celebrate or what you should do. This is only us saying as factual as we possibly could be within our certain parameters. Um, this is only meant for education and explaining that there are different sides to these differing opinions. There are different sides. So I don't think any of us really shared personal opinions today.
No, we have not. But
So we'll keep it that way. At least in terms of what you should or shouldn't or can or can't.
I'm not gonna.
Um,
Everyone's
but
everyone just has to keep an open mind. That's all you can say.
yes, we're trying to do an educational thing, unbiased or as unbiased as we can. Um, of
Hmm.
course, I did dive a lot into a significant event that happened early in the 2000s, but that is one of those things that kind of had to mention.
Oh, yep. So I think we did dive. We did dive pretty deep in that one event. But again, we're all gonna be open minded. If you want to celebrate the holiday, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But the holiday's there.
Said,
So I
well,
guess.
with that being said, I guess take it away with the conclusion, Dom.
All right, and this has been an American episode of the DomJake podcast. And like, comment, and subscribe, and click the notification bell if you don't want to miss an episode of this podcast or any other future stuff we do. And we'll see you next time.